So welcome everybody to the Workamajig Media webinar. We're just going to start rolling. Again, maybe today's agenda is just going to be, again, we'll go through the system settings to make sure that you guys can see it. We'll also look at creating a vendor station and publication and the settings that can go on that to help you kind of with your workflow. We'll also look at the client record again to kind of get those the setup to see, look at, for example, commission rates and things like that. Okay. Then we'll kind of go into the workflow where we're actually picking up those items and adding and editing orders, see where I can go to look at the orders, and then again connecting an order to a vendor invoice. Okay. Probably some of this is just redo of the purchasing, and that's really what it is. There's no difference between a media order and a purchase order. They're still the same. You have an order, it comes in for a certain amount, it's run, and then you connect a vendor invoice to it. And if there's a difference, then you'll be able to pay that or bill that out to the client. Or you'll be able to pay it, but you'll also be able to bill out any differences to the client. Okay? So let's go ahead and get going. Again, if you have any questions, there's a Q&A button that you can click into that, and I'll get to those questions as we come about. All right. So to begin with, again, we're just looking at Workamajig webinar, and we're going to, again, be looking at today media. And so, of course, there is some setup for this. The first is we're going to go to Workamajig webinar, or menu, admin manager, system setup. Okay. The first is actually transaction preferences, and from here we're actually saying use media. Okay, so that's the first one, so it kind of makes that media module visible. Some of the information here that we'd want to look at is if we have defaults, right, the prefix, things like that. If you had a certain order type that would fit all of those, that's something you can put in. The other is, oh, sorry, that went wrong. I clicked out, sorry about that. As far as printing, again, usually we do printing at net only, then who perhaps is the main approver, okay, and then the required link to whatever you're doing. And usually we do that with Workamajig is through a project. Again, project allows us the best kind of tracking and reporting where we can get budget versus actual versus what was billed type of information from it, okay. We do that for insertion orders. We do it for broadcast orders. If you're using Strata, that's a slightly different one, and again, that won't be covered today. Okay. The next thing we're going to look at is under media, or sorry, I'm actually going to stay within account information and security settings. Of course, within the rights, there is going to be can I use media? So there's going to be view today media, also view media graphs if you're using that. If I go further down, there's also going to be media where can I create certain things, right? So I'm kind of scrolling fast here to get to those. And so under media, there's going to be create media estimates. Now again, in Workamajig, tend not to use estimates, so not important. But again, can I edit insertion orders after approval, that type of thing. So again, those are the spots where you're saying allowing people to do things regarding the media. Okay. After that, we're going to go to media itself, and this is actually where we're going to look at broadcast items and print and digital items. So regarding online stuff, we kind of consider that at this time to be print. Okay, so just because of the way they react, and so this is where you would put in your item, right? The item name. If there's a specific commission rate that goes with that that's different from what would be a standard, then again you can put that in. That would default in, but we can also change that on the client side where it defaults in. For example, if it's not 15% standard, it's 10% or 7% for that particular client, or it's a straight pass-through. We'll look at those settings. But we want to make sure that those are tied to an expense account and a sales account as well. Okay, it's a typical setup. If we allow revision reasons in media, of course, and so you can set up your own revision reasons. The markets, if you're dealing with that, again, you can set up your own markets. Okay, and again, sorry, I didn't do the broadcast ones, but it's the same type of thing, right? So we have the item itself, again, and how it ties out and if there's a commission involved in it. Okay. Under purchasing, though, there's some other things that we can add in, and this is how the order. So there is some additional tracking that we can set up, not necessary, but just realize that, for example, I can define an order type. And with that order type, I can actually define perhaps line information that would come through. So for example, for Facebook, I added a line number of impressions, an ad type. So when I create this type of line, right, for this client, then it's going to allow me to get that further information in, okay? So again, so I can put in those custom fields for certain things, right? Again, and you're defining those, what's necessary or what you need, okay? And then we, again, define that into an order type where you can see there's standard headers and things like that, and basically, again, allowing that to kind of pull in. So as you can see, I have a default type name. That will give me that default line called Facebook, so we'll see how that kind of works out here shortly, okay? If you have standard header and footer text that goes along with it, you can also get that in there as well, okay? All right, so that's the main kind of back-end system setup, okay? We also have on the client side, okay, a little bit of setup that you can do. So I'm just going to go to billing and client in this case and just pick a client, okay? And under the project defaults, again, there are some items that may be in here. The number one would be, again, where do I get the markup from? And in this case, it's going to say I get it from the item, so it's looking to that. But if I happen to say, no, I get it from the project, which is every project I have, and this is where you would have those additional changes. So if your IO commission, for example, is only 5% instead of 15, again, which is set up on the item, then I can override the orders in this case to give that different commission rate, okay? We also have settings where we're saying the pre-bill at. So again, if it's a straight pass-through, you can set up the client to say pre-bill at net, so that'd be a pass-through, or you could do pre-bill at gross, where obviously you get the gross, and then you'd pay the vendor the difference, right, into net with the commission. Or if they in fact send the vendor themselves send the bill to the client, we could do commission only. So again, the setting on this client is, again, how it would create those orders, or sorry, the client invoices for this, okay? All right, and so by default, if I don't do anything, it's going to be kind of gross. So again, this is the way, by default, it should be gross, okay? But then again, if you have the difference with a client, you can set it up that way, okay? The next bit of setup would be more under the vendor, okay? And that's really to create the stations and publications or those sites. When it comes to printing of an invoice, again, oftentimes we will, print by grouping by, for example, the publication or the station. And so how is it that, for example, like iHeart, if you're doing buys from them, they have many different stations. How do we show the breakout of stations and still have, I'm only paying the one vendor, okay? So the easiest way to get that done is I would have a vendor, and in my vendor list I have, for example, big media company. And so I go ahead and set that vendor up, and then I can come into my media and actually say, and I could have done that here, a new vendor, but I can say, okay, I need a new publication or a new station. So I'm just going, for example, use publication, and I can say, what's the publication's name? And it might be, the biweekly news magazine, right? Something like that. I can go ahead and, what's the ID? So in this case, I'm just going to say BWNM. Again, the acronym tends to be something less than 8 characters, something short. This is the hook that we'll need to kind of attach it to many things. And then I basically am saying, okay, which vendor does this belong to? Okay, so I can say BMC, for example, because that's my big media company. If it has a certain market for it, okay. If it's a certain item, again, this would default in. Sorry, that's a bug that we got. So let me kind of pull that out, and then I will kind of come back in. Thought we had that one fixed, sorry. And so again, I can pick what is it that they are providing me. And so in this case, it was the weekly news, so I'm just going to call it newspaper, or it's a magazine, sorry. So I will connect it to magazine, okay? I also get some space close and materials due dates. So for example, if the space close is 14 days prior, and let's say the materials due is a week in advance of that order date, that's how the order itself will come across. So I just hit save, and so if I have additional information I can put in, addresses, things like that. Again, if you have any conversations related to this, again, that's just something that can attach to that. Okay. The station works the same way, right? I'm just I create the station, associate it to a vendor, pick the item that it belongs to. Again, any kind of mailing address, things like that, materials due, save that, and then it would show up. Okay? And that is kind of the setup. Okay? I can kind of stop there. Not many questions in there. Okay, so broadcast and print, any thoughts of creating social media process? At this time, again, we would just be using print to take care of the Facebook stuff and did online stuff. Commissions via item instead of client. Okay, and again, by default, it's actually looking to the items to get those commission rates, and so that's where it's really pulling it off. The item rate sheet is more what's the net and gross. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So, okay. So on we go, really. So now I can kind of look at, again, if you have any questions, please type them in. Sorry, I don't activate people so they can kind of say anything. Sorry about that. Just to keep your privacy there. So again, if you want to just type in a question into that or into the chat, then I can answer those. Okay. So now that we get to the media screen. So again, this is done by, again, what in this case, Workamajig webinar, again, menu, media, today media. And even this has a little bit more setup to it where I can actually in the ... more and about system settings. And this is where based upon what you guys do and what security group you want to have access, you can define what is it that they're going to be seeing along the left-hand side. So if you don't do, broadcast orders at all, you can obviously remove those from the view and they wouldn't show up. Okay? And again, what does the daily view? And again, that's pretty standard through all of our today screens. All right? Now, on the today media screen, what is it that we see? So along the left side, again, you're going to see any open items. So what we're trying to show you is any orders that have been created but have not been approved. Okay? Any open orders. And then also it may, if you have the rights, you may even see unapproved vendor invoices that are associated to open orders. Oh, sorry, that did come to mind with having unapproved broadcast orders. There is a setting, one more on the employee record, and that's of course my order limits. So again, under my name or under that employee record, under accounting, you're going to see purchasing, and you're going to have, of course, what are their insertion order limits. And so again, usually if I'm a buyer, that's going to be kind of big. And same thing with the broadcast, probably even bigger than the print, right? So again, I'm going to make sure that somebody at least has that super big number to take care of it, okay? So I'll go ahead and save that one. Sorry about that. And let's get back to the media. Sorry. So again, on the employee record, setting up their order limits for media, okay? So again, so on the left-hand side, like I said, we're going to show you anything, open broadcast orders. So again, that probably is something that I need to take care of. Open orders would be one of those things where I'm clicking and saying, okay, shouldn't there already be a vendor invoice for this? So I'm probably going to open that one up and take a look at who ordered it, perhaps. And I see that Daddy Harbuggle ordered this, and we billed it, but I don't see that vendor invoice. So I either need to contact the vendor or, again, talk to the account manager to say, where's that vendor invoice for this? Okay. All right. Yeah, Alberto, sorry, let me just type in for Alberto. You say it doesn't have sound. Sorry about that, guys. Just typing into, somebody didn't have any sound, and so I'm just letting them know that probably dialing out and back in. Okay. So again, that's the idea of that open area. Okay. The orders needing attention. Now we kind of look at this one to be more, again, I have these orders with the space close and material due dates that I placed in, and that's where I'm kind of tracking those, right? So I'll show you when we create the order where I can basically say that it's, the space is closed, which means I'm going to basically place these orders either by print or by email. I can send that order out to the vendor. And then once that's done, then it would drop off this list. I have a materials due. This is more just a checksum, all right? I know that I need this broadcast, this ad. I may go check and see what it is, and then have I uploaded that to the station or not? And if I have, then again, I can already say that the materials are sent. So that's kind of a way to take care of those. And again, once I mark that, then it would disappear off this list, okay? I have the views into the various things I've done. Like I said, usually with Workamajig Media, most people are not going to create an estimate. This was just a way of kind of putting an umbrella around a lot of different orders. But in fact, that's what the project is really going to do. So if you have either a single media project or in the project where you created that particular deliverable, right, either that ad or that print ad, whatever it is, right, maybe that's where you're tracking it. So either a single project for the client, where it's tracking all their media buys, or you have those individual projects that are creating the deliverables that you're tracking those buys in. It's kind of up to you guys how do you want to track that, okay? And neither one's more common than the other. Maybe having a single media project is maybe the most common, so, okay? Then I'm going to be able to see, again, any stations that I've created. This is just views, so again, I can go look at any of the stations that have been created. Same thing for publications. I'd be able to see all my publications, okay? So how are they coming in? And then again, the individual top line insertion orders, which is slightly different than the broadcast order details, which is more giving me the individual lines on those orders. Okay, so that's why you're seeing a lot more lines in this, because this is actually showing those individual broadcast lines. Okay, so that's the views. A couple of reports that we would be looking into as well would probably be, maybe media billing, but I think media details is a good one to use. This is basically going to show me where is all my stuff. So again, based upon the dates and what you're kind of looking at, I usually kind of tell people to open it up completely, and I'm just going to do that. So I'm looking at my insertion and broadcast orders, and I'm just saying, show me closed orders. Again, you would run this much more compactly, maybe just saying, show me over-unders, high detail, roll it all up by order, again, because you're just seeing those kind of top level and not needing the detail. But I'm just going to, for you guys, I'm just going to show you the detail. I'm just running saying, show closed order. So when I run this in a PDF, okay, you're going to see, let me kind of blow this up. Let's see, here we go, just so it's a little bit better on the screen. Okay, so what is it that we're going to see? We're obviously going to see the order and what it is that you order. Was it cable or TV or magazine type of thing? We're going to see the dates, okay, that was supposed to go out. I'm going to see how much was ordered on that particular line. I'm going to see how much was invoiced. This is the net side, right? So it's going to be a vendor invoice, and what's the difference between those. We're also going to show you the actual vendor invoice and if that vendor invoice has been paid or not, okay? If I scroll over a bit more, I'm actually going to see the gross part, which would be, again, how much was billed to the client. Was it actually billed to the client or not? What the difference, and again, what client invoice is that part of? So if I kind of scroll down a little bit, that might be a little better view here. So again, I'm seeing this particular line was billed on, invoice 1270. The client still hasn't paid me yet, so I'm waiting for that payment. But the other thing that may worry me, since this was in September, is I still do not have a vendor invoice for it. So I may need to go contact the vendor invoice to make sure that comes in. This one, again, looks like it's kind of tied out. Then client invoice went out. I've been paid for it. I also got the vendor invoice in, and that was paid. And there's my differences, right? It came in with no difference here, but for some reason I gave $75 back to the client. Okay? Okay? that make sense? Okay. All right. So that's kind of the screen. How am I kind of looking at things, kind of tracking them? And we'll go ahead and create one and kind of look at these orders as they're coming in as well. Okay. Let me just see if we have a couple questions. Yeah. What if a client is not a pre-bill? Okay. Can you bill at gross? Yes, absolutely. So again, you set it up to say pre-bill at gross. Basically, you're waiting for the vendor invoice to come in. So when the vendor invoice comes in, it would look at that and say this is the gross for it. So it's going to actually, make that what's billable. Okay. How do we get to get the media access? Okay, you guys do have media access. As the kind of the first thing I did is in system setup under transaction preferences, there's a use media, and that's kind of what activates it. Then after that, it's security rights to say you can use media. Okay. Is there a certain setup when a client only gets billed a certain commission on net, but we get broadcast orders at gross? Okay. Certain commission on net and broadcast. Okay, that would kind of come in maybe from the order itself. Again, we tend to deal in, usually you're not doing some things at net and some things at gross. It's usually one or the other. But again, it may be on the individual order for the odd ones that you're flipping it to say pre-bill this particular order at gross versus net. Okay, maybe the client, mostly we do it at net. Every once in a while we do a gross, and so I'd probably flip the ones on gross. Okay. Okay, and again, we're not talking about Strata today, and it syncs with Strata. Okay, so that's a different call. How can I default that I can approve my own IOs, BOs? That is really, again, you being able to approve orders is purely based upon your level or your, the amount that you're allowed to approve. So in your employee record, there's an order limit. If that order is below that order limit, you get the approve button. Okay. If it's above, it has to go to somebody else. Okay. Okay. Yeah, for the report, again, you can go by certain things, but it's going to show me multiple clients at once. You can pick individual clients in the media detail report, but generally you're just going to pick one, or it's going to be for all of them, and then within a certain time frame. You can also go by account manager, so there's quite a bit of filters that go into it. Okay? All right. So the other question is about how do I create an IO, and that's actually what we're going to go to now. So, all right. So again, you're working with a client and they need an order, and you're going to do both an IO and a BO. We'll create both of those. And so if I come into here, just a plus icon. I can also come to here and say plus icon, and if I have the right, again, media is going to be under here. So either location is going to allow me to create this media order. Okay. So I'll first start with an insertion order. Okay. And I can say, well, who's the vendor? So if I say big media, when I do that, it's going to give me the publications that are available for that client. Okay. If I do it the opposite, maybe I know what the publication is, that's going to give me a list of publications. And so when I pick that, it's going to automatically fill in the vendor that's associated with it. So it just depends on how you want to work that. Okay. Don't worry about GL company. Sorry, that's just something I have setting. Again, what project is this going to go to? Again, that's going to come in. So I'm just going to grab a project that goes with this. I'm not worried about my estimate, and I may again put in my media type, right? If that wasn't already pre-set up, right, I can then say, yeah, this is going to be, for example, Facebook, and I'm just doing this so I can show you those custom fields that come across. You also see here's where it's saying pre-bill at gross. Again, that came in because I picked the particular client. That's what defaulted in, okay? And so then if I need it to be net in this case, then I can go ahead and set it to net. Okay, if it's commission only, I can set it to commission only. Otherwise, it's going to use the gross. I go ahead and save that. And now it's time for me to create a line. So again, it comes in for Forbes. It's going against this particular project. Okay. Right now, again, it's saying Bryn Sony. And then it's going to also be me. That's why I still perhaps have the submit. I don't have any dollar values in here yet. What am I picking? So again, we want you to do it in the grid perhaps, and so I can basically, pick it, put in a date. So I select this and say, okay, it's going to start on the 28th. Tab it across, tab it across. The item is already picked out. For magazine, that's where I can basically, put in whatever caption I want on page 3, whatever that is, right? It's 2 columns, again, all that information. I then put in the gross. Let's just say that's 300. Again, I didn't have a commission. Oh, mine is requiring a task, so I may have to change the project. Erg. Okay, sorry, I thought I had a project that was going to be set up for this. Okay. Okay. Sorry, my requirements require a project. Sorry about that. I'll just do this. Shrimp. Okay, 1907. Okay. And I'll go ahead and just create a new one here. So, sorry about that, guys. So, insertion order, pick my same vendor. Okay, so big media, the magazine, that was for Smith, and the project is going to be my media buy. There we go. Again, go ahead and put in Facebook, kind of getting me to the same spot here. Let me add in a line. Why is that not giving me a task? Grr. There we go. Okay. And then again, I can come in and you can see that based upon that client, okay, I'd actually put in on this client that there's a 40% commission. Of course, I can always adjust this commission down from my original order, but again, I'm going to have a gross of 400, and I'm going to be paying the vendor net of 240. Okay. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. So again, I'm just putting in a line, putting in the date of that line, what task does it belong to, the item that I'm picking, and then pulling in the rest from there. Okay. You'll notice that because I set it to a type as Facebook, that allowed me to have these additional lines that is called number of impressions, and let's just say 200 or something like that. And then I may even have this where it's, display ad or something like that. Again, I just put in these custom fields that would show up on it. Okay. I can also duplicate this line because again, this is all going to be the same. What's usually going to be different is perhaps the date, right? So this is where I can just select the date and say this is going to be the following week. And again, everything should cascade off of that. Please close. Ask about that one. Okay. And so that's like 10 days in advance or something like that. So yeah, I'm just going to pick some dates here. We'll be good to go. All right. So, and then I can also, again, open and close. This one is basically to add a revision. We tend not to use those unless you've already built this particular item. So again, either I'm inserting a row and going from there, right? For each one I need to add in. Okay. Adding in all of my, again, the information either in the long description or in the add number caption area, and then moving forward. Now this is also going to be, auto save, and then I would then be able to either submit this for approval, depending on how else, and again, this is going to give me a list of all people that it can approve it if I need to submit it. Otherwise, it usually will go to anyone that's approved for this limit. Now that I have the right to approve it, I just get the approve button. But in case I did need to send it to somebody else, I'd be able to. But I can already see, since there are no names here, nobody has that limit. So be aware of that. So this name would be anybody that could approve the $720. Okay? Let's take a short pause here. Okay. Okay. So again, about the, getting those custom fields. So again, it's more, since this is an insertion order, again, it can be for many things. And so the idea is that you can set up, having, since I said Facebook, right? So you could do online as an order type and put in custom lines. So whatever line, line fields that you need, those would then be available. Now, I didn't put those into the grid, but if you do use those a lot, you can go into system settings and add those grid lines. Okay, so we have custom fields that should be in there. I think we did. Oh, no, we didn't. Sorry, you're going to have to, for the broadcast, a little different. But again, if you spin open line, you would be able to get those lines into it. Okay. So yeah, at this time we don't have digital, so again, that's the best way to get that done. Okay. Okay. All right. So now as far as doing revisions and things like that, so again, usually a revision is caused by I've already billed these, right? So this has been approved and billed, and then perhaps the vendor said, hey, there's, it's going to be something different, right? Now in this case, again, it usually doesn't happen in print, right? But maybe for digital, right? You went in for 400 gross and it came in for something different. I can just simply click add the revision, and it's going to say how, right? It says, oh, it's going, whatever reason. Again, you saw where we could create our own reasons, and what is it for? So how much gross is the difference going to be? And let's say it's, they reduced it by $120, and so that's what I would put in. And so there's my revision line. The revision is the same number. It just would be a .1. So it's line 3.1. That's the line and the adjustment number that would be made. Okay. So when I get my vendor invoice, I'm going to get my vendor invoice for $170 or $68, right? $68, right? So in that case, what I want to make sure is when I tie my vendor invoice, that I'll tie them to both of those lines so it makes the correct amount, because I expect a vendor invoice for for 168. Okay. So that's an order line. Been approved. Approval limits. There we go. Okay. We haven't billed this yet. We'll get into the billing in just a second. Let me go ahead and create the during that station, a broadcast order, kind of doing the same thing. Again, I have big media company, what station, KWAT. So I'm going to have to pick that one. My project is the same, media. Okay, that's right. Okay. Description, don't have an estimate. What are my dates? Again, 27th through some odd date up to the future. Sorry, I think I put Sunday on there. Didn't mean to. Okay. And again, order type, if I have a certain type, again, typical order, I did that, pre-bill, gross, or net. And again, that will allow lines to come through. Create the line. That's the task it goes to. What's my start date for it? What's the item, right, that I'm buying? Again, that was predefined on my station. What program? This is where I can say, right, 10 spots. The gross is going to be 300. And again, I get my 42% commission type of thing, right? So on and so forth as I keep adding those in. Again, if I need to copy that, again, here's the copy of it, and then again, I can just change the dates on that to whatever date I need to, and again, it's going and maybe change something else on it. Okay. Make sense? Revision line, same thing. Add a revision. It's just going to put in a 2.1. In this case, maybe I say it's going to say what's my revision reason, and again, maybe that's that. And again, what's the gross? He's going again took it down to 100 or something like that, and save. And that's where I'm going to get that. Okay. Just give me the spots too. Sorry, meant to do -5 there. Okay. Okay. So again, that's usually, again, I'd be waiting for a vendor invoice to come in to maybe perhaps make a difference. Okay. And I'll go ahead and approve those. Okay. So that's kind of making the orders in the system. Okay. All right. Let me see if there's some questions that can come in at this time. Yeah. So again, the order types and media types, yes, you can add in whatever you need to. So again, it's custom fields. So you just create as many lines and fields as you need that would fit what you're buying. So I just happen to have Facebook in there and had certain fields in there, but you can do it for anything. Are you the end date from digital to capture? The end date, again, we just have a due. So again, if you need an end date, I'd probably add that as one of the custom line fields for it. Can you create an order without a project? Yes, but that depends on what your settings are in the system. If that's a GL transaction setting where you're saying, you know, do I require a task on my expenses? And I happen to have that set up. So if that is set up, yes, you have to have a task. But if not, then you do not. Okay. Is space close to the last possible date to book the media? Yes, I would go along with that line. Okay. All right. So the next thing we would have is, again, typically we would be billing this. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly go to billing. That is usually not part of, you know, media because you're usually just placing it and maybe taking care of the vendor invoices. But if you are, again, it would come into billing and it's going to be part of that billing process. Now, typically, billing media is kind of contractual, right? So you already know how much. You've already shown them the tear sheets, right? Here's what we're going to order, right? So this is what you owe us. So generally, we would say in your billing process, you're going to do usually retainers, take care of them, and then you do media, take care of that, and then you would do, you know, your normal time and materials either through billing worksheets or that. Not saying you can't run media through billing worksheets, but again, typically since it's contractual, there's no further agreement needed. And so again, typically you'd say, well, through what date range are we billing, right? So the insertion orders and broadcast orders. So again, kind of pop this out further. So typically you're billing 30 to 60 days or even 90 days in advance, and you're doing that search for that criteria, selecting those particular orders, as you can see. And again, you can see where I can select one line or I can select all the lines. It's really up to you to decide which ones am I actually billing. Okay, so I'm just going to, just for sake of doing it, I'm just going to go ahead and select all. In this case, it fell through. But again, I'm able to make those adjustments. Which one am I going to be billing? And go ahead and say generate those invoices. How do I need it to be generated? Usually it's one invoice per project perhaps, so each one gets its own. One line item per invoice. And again, do I need detail or not? I may do it this way, one line item per publication station. Generate those invoices. Those are now going out based upon other settings, which we're not getting into, but those would be kind of sitting either here, right? Or they're going to be sitting, you know, already approved, or they're going to be sitting in print. Okay, does that make sense? And so let me get today's 22. So here's my media ads one. Okay. Nope, that's not that one. Where did I do that for? Thought I pulled something through for today. Let me try to open this up a little bit further. I'll make sure that those orders are both approved. Yeah, they are. Okay. Okay. And then just to get this this invoice in there so I can see. Okay. So again, not so much the billing process of what we're looking at. It's just more that, again, that's a typical way of getting those invoices out there. Okay, so they must be waiting for it being submitted. All right. Here we go. Okay, so here's the one. And so again, based upon how I've set up my other things for printing and things like that, again, it's great. This is a terrible layout, but again, I would have, here's the station, here's how much, again, and some of the other things. Sorry, it's a really bad layout that I had been picked for this. Yeah, it's a little better there. So again, we can have, you can adjust this how, again, what's printing out, but you can see, maybe let me bump it up again so you guys can see it. And again, I have a lot of information up above that maybe isn't necessary, but again, there's that broadcast order and the amounts that are being placed in there. Okay. So again, not to worry about that one. All right. So then after that, it would be more, again, I build it, then I have my vendor invoices coming in. Okay. So the vendor invoices, again, if you have the right, it's usually through purchasing. That's be the most typical place that vendor invoices are coming in. Plus icon, vendor invoice, or I'm using the plus icon up here, vendor invoice. And so again, vendor invoice, who's the vendor? And so again, I have go. Okay. So again, this is GL company getting in the way. Sorry, I have GL company set. Okay, so I have BMC, right? So that's my vendor. The invoice number is, be just what's on the piece of paper, and the dates would be what's on the piece of paper. Again, it's going to recognize that there's orders out there, outstanding, that I can then select off, or I can kind of wait. And I'm just going to wait just so you can kind of see everything. I'm not so worried about these right now because I know I'm going to pick orders. Okay, but realize that you could simply pick the order right away, and that would kind of give you that particular line. Okay, so I'm just going to save, and yes, I do. Now the system would recognize that with this vendor that there are insertion and there's broadcast orders out there for this vendor. And so again, if I pick in broadcast orders, it's going to show me. And so this is where I can actually say, oh, okay, yeah, here it's for this line and this line, but not this line. Or it's only for this line. And if it's not for this line, right, or something. And so just like normal purchasing, right, I'm basically saying how many spots, what's the open net, okay? So if this vendor invoice, let's say it came in for only one spot, right, and it came in for $58. Well, as long as I don't close this line, then that line's going to be available to provide me with the another vendor invoice for another 2 spots. I know media doesn't usually work that way. It's going to be either for the whole amount or not. So if I actually said close this spot, let me see if I had pre-billed that. And I can see that I had pre-billed $300 for this client, okay, to that client. If I now say, well, this is only for one spot and for 100, and I say that's the last line, it's saying, well, just a second, you pre-billed 300. Do you want to change the amount? So what it does is you can see under amount billed, I'm sorry that I may have to bump that up a little bit for you guys. Okay. So you can see right here that when I said close that line, that it actually recognized, in just like a normal purchase order, that hey, you pre-billed 300, and so there's this $200 that's different that you could refund your client. So this would just need to be rebilled to the client, giving them back the $200. Or you could say, yep, that's fine, but I'm not giving any money back, even if the spots didn't run. So that's how I can kind of adjust those two things. Okay, and that's just based upon, again, selecting it off, saying this is the last order line, and then putting in what that difference is, and the system will recognize that there may be a difference in it. Okay, does that make sense? So again, if I come back out of it, right, it's all back to the way it was. So typically, again, it's usually a one-to-one. Maybe it was run short, but again, only 2 spots ran. And that I may be waiting for another one. I can leave it like that, and it will remain open. So again, if I say save this, and let me just refresh, and I go back out and just pretend this is, sometime later, you'll see that the system recognized that there was still a spot available for me to apply a vendor invoice towards. Okay, again, just like normal purchasing. Okay, and again, any difference would then be available. Right now, there's nothing to bill, right? But if there is a difference, let's say, for example, that this came in for, $75, right? Again, the system is going to say, hey, you remember you pre-billed 300, the total that's been pre-billed, so that's going to give me that difference of $29 that, again, I can bill back to the client or simply, again, zero it out. Okay? Now, again, this goes through its own process. Again, I'm not going to approve this, but let's see what it does in my media. Okay, so you can see in my media, I have unapproved orders, open orders, right, and I have this unapproved invoice, and that's that invoice that I hadn't approved yet. So again, we're letting you know that those things are available. Okay. All right. Now, some of the things I hadn't gotten to because maybe I didn't have the orders. So again, maybe for the space close. So the idea of the space close when I click into that is, again, there's going to be spots where I can actually change the description. This is before I'm sending it out, right? I'm going to set the descriptions, maybe some special instructions, traffic instructions. This is one of the spots where I actually can put in my custom field. So there's my impressions and custom field there. That doesn't show up in broadcast, but it will for my print. Okay, so let me get my print ones in there and get these ones in, right, because I have some orders that are that way. And you'll see that I did have, remember, I set up that one that had 200 impressions and the display ad. So again, and these are actually, let's see, thought we could, yeah. So again, the ad caption, that type of information, special instructions, you can edit through the line. When it's ready to go off, select it, and if you email it, then it's going to, again, I'll say, well, how do you want to email it? But again, it can't email. It's going to tell you because there's no recipient for number one on that order, plus there's no email address available, okay? Just happens to be the way I set it. If I print it, it's just simply going out and creating that PDF for me to then take and then send off to the vendor itself. Okay. And once I do that, actually on that order, so if I go to that order itself, it actually shows that I had printed it. So what it's looking for is this one, material sent or ordered, is just saying that if I printed it or I emailed it, that would be that it was ordered. And once I say, yes, I sent the materials, then again, it would check box this. If you needed to see it again, all you have to do is uncheck it and it would appear back in the list. But that's what the system would automatically do, is check these two boxes depending on what location you did this from. So materials due would check box. The order space close, or space close would be the order, and the materials due is sent. Okay? All right. Okay, so some of the questions we have in the chat. So again, here, now's the time, right? So how do you customize columns and things? Again, this is a security right. With most grids, there's going to be a system settings, and that would be, again, where I'm deciding what's available. And one of the things, if there is a grid, they'll show me what fields I can add to the grid. As far as for custom fields that I'm putting in the actual order, that's going to be under Admin System Setup, and again in this case under Purchasing, and I would have these define order line groups, and this is where I define the line, and then just like my normal tracking, like for spec sheets and things, I create the field, and then I drag the field over into the layout, and that's how I get it in there. Okay. And then that would become part of that. So creating it is just a matter of saying what's the field name, what's the caption on it, what type is it, and saving that. And again, you can contact your account manager, and they're happy to show you how to get that done. Okay. How do you tie out a vendor invoice to an IO? I think I showed you that, right? It's basically the vendor invoice. You pick the lines that it goes to, and that's the way it goes. So again, and then you have control over saying it's closed or not. Okay. Okay. Yeah, most reports are going to have the start, the end date of the ad run. Again, that end date is going to be a custom field at this time. So again, that would just be a custom field that you pull into the report. Will you receive an email confirmation of send? No. Again, it's just going to be sent out to that email address, and it'll be coming from you. We would have a log of it being sent out, but you're not getting confirmation for that. Can you add standard IO notes to all IOs? Yes. There's several locations. So if I open a particular IO, again, over here, special instructions will be traffic and special instructions. Each line would have a description field that you can add notes into as well. Okay. What is the purpose of media estimate? Again, with manual, the media estimate is really more for if you're syncing with Strata, because that's the way they see things. When you're just manually using, just using Workamajig media, tends to use the project instead, so the media estimate isn't really necessary. Okay, how do you reconcile open IOs when the PO was entered without linking it to the IO? Well, number one, I would say don't do that. But again, you can always see if it's been billed, then it will show up in the accrued order detail. But again, you're always going to have a listing from media where you can see there's open orders, right? Remember, so if I'm in media and I'm looking at here's the open orders, that's where I'm saying where's the vendor invoice for that. So if I don't see one for this, I'm probably going to be talking to my account manager, right? Who created this, right? Or what project is it for? Again, where's my vendor invoice? Oh, we brought that in already. Oh, then I can just simply close the line if that's the case, right? Close the line if it's already to go, or I can close the project itself. If I'm looking at this across the board, again, I would have views into the orders themselves to see where things are at. The other thing is, there was a breakout of billing by month. Okay, so billing would be billing. So every item that it bills, again, that's going to be somewhat in the billing detail. So can I see each IO and how it was billed in the line? Yeah, I mean, if the billing detail report would provide me with that IO and what was billed in it. Okay. Oh, that's all. I would hate to. Okay. So when I send out an IO, again, not on the IO will there be a note, but on the obviously the email, you're allowed to put in a note and talk about it. So that would be replicated across every vendor that you sent that, select all, send them out. So if I came here and I said select this and I said email this, I get, my message would be that. And then how do I send those out? But I don't know what else. Again, I guess when you're creating the IO, if you have a note to go with it, I'm not sure. Okay. Okay. And let me go to Q&A here. Decustomize order type so you can. Okay. Okay. Can you create an order without a project? Yeah. Again, that just depends. Is space close considered the last possible date? Okay. What are options for the sales cost to be captured in which period? Okay. So the date on the line that's associated with it, that's really the date. Then they have the bill date, which may be different, right? So I'm not sure. The cost itself, depending on if it's the vendor invoice, would come from the vendor invoice. If it's from the client invoice, then it'd be the client invoice date would be the date that it goes into COGS, because we do kind of a pre-bill accrual, which captures that. Okay, commissions in many places, what overrides what? Okay, the item is the first thing that you set up with a commission. Then it comes to the client record. Where do I go to get that commission rate? That's what overrides it. Then when I create again, that's what would default in. And then on that actual order, I can make another change, right? So it's basically defaults in from the item, or actually it's kind of defaulting in from the client record, and then basically on the order itself, I can make a change. So how do you tie vendor invoice with multiple months without closing? Yeah, so we did that one. Can you have two projects on one BO or IO? I'm going to say no. Can you have two different projects on one BO or IO? Technically, yes. But it just, to me, it leads to confusion. Different project, to me, would be different client, perhaps, right? And so then you're sending that to a different vendor, then it may, again, just get confused for that. So I would say doable, but shouldn't, right? When sending out invoices to client, if you select dates based on broadcast month, will it only bill what you should have run during that time period? Yeah, again, during the billing process, you're picking the dates to say, show me transactions on or before this date that have not been billed. So you're picking the date, so that's all that will go on to a client invoice. Can the billing invoice show each insertion line? Yes. Full detail is available. It's just you have to make it that way. What is the purpose of me? Okay, is there? Yes, we do have an integration with Strata. And that's what we're not talking about, but yes, there is an integration with Strata. They bought out the other one, which was Smart Plus, but Strata bought them out. So again, it's pretty much down to Strata. We are working on a new one for just basically importing things in and media estimates and stuff. So there may be that functionality as well. We also have an API available that we'll kind of work with the media coming up probably in the next couple of months. Also, I no longer see the media icon on the primary screen. I'm not sure what. Okay, yeah. For people who are having like visual issues, just send us an email, support@workamajig.com, and we can troubleshoot that. How do we designate a client as post-bill as opposed to pre-bill? Unfortunately, there's not a designation for that during the billing process. If you generally don't bill them, most people would know who those are. So they would just not pick them up in the billing process. If you generate the invoice, again, it can always be deleted. Oh, that's order, so again. Okay. So Workamajig versus Strata. Okay. Strata is that buying module. They have all the details in that. We don't. So I mean, technically, could you put in all your orders in here and have all the stations? Sure, but you're not going to have any of the ratings information and all that stuff. So is it to replace Strata? No. Could you? I guess. I mean, again, if you call up the station and you get a bulk, hey, I want to place $10,000 in orders, and they decide what goes in, and then you put that into Workamajig as a single IO or BO, yes, then it's doing the same thing. Would I probably get the breakout of detail? Probably not, but then maybe it's not necessary. Okay. Will we be doing a Workamajig Strata webinar? No. Okay, everybody's a little bit different on that, so unfortunately, no. We do have some new features, and everybody's Strata is their own Strata, and so I don't have a Strata thing, so that's why I can't show the combination. So yeah, just contact your account manager, and we can set up a call with you. Okay. Where can I go to understand better the sales by recognized in period? I'm not sure what that one means. Maybe if you can follow up with something more. Where can I go to understand better the sales by recognized and period? Will there be a date stamp on orders emailed for reference? Yes, date sent. Okay. Okay. All right. Oh, some more in the the chat here. Ready to break. When insertion order is out that I send to the vendor, can the monthly spend be split out on the insertion order that you send to a vendor? Well, again, if you want to bill to the client, okay, and you want to bill them 4 times, one for each month, and it's a 4-month buy, then I would recommend that you have a line for each of the things that you want to bill. That's the best way to get it because you only get one shot at it. If you want to break that out to the vendor, then again, same type of idea, right? Whatever makes it easier for them. Again, you only get kind of one shot to bill a line, whether it's a vendor invoice or an order. So keep that in mind. So if you need to bill something 4 times, make sure you have 4 lines just to make it easier to bill. Okay. Are there any plans to be able to have vendors upload invoices and the system match them? Probably not. Are there any plans to be able to have vendors upload invoices and the system match them? Like I said, that probably not, because there's going to be a lot of controls that are a part of that. Security rights as well as which order, right? Because again, maybe they have a different order number than what you provided them. Believe me, it happens. So no, it would be you basically getting that email or you going somewhere, or you can import it in. So yes, there is that methodology to get it to go. But okay. All right. See if there's any more here. Okay. I don't know if I answered. What are the options for the sales cost to be captured in which period, order, date, or, okay. So as far as, an order is not a cost, but if you bill it, the posting date on your client invoice is the date that we would technically put in an accrued order as well as a COGS entry in as part of that. So on that date, that's when you would kind of be seeing the cost going into the system. And then when the true vendor invoice comes in, we reverse that pre-bill information out and put in the true cost. So. Okay, sorry, just kind of going through things. Okay, so again, when you pre-bill an order, the order is always based up, the date it hits your account is the date of that client invoice. So the sale is the date that it goes on the client invoice, whatever that posting date is. But we'll also make those 2 side entries where it would be, again, the accrued order account and the cost of goods account will get hit as well on that same day from that client invoice. Again, waiting until the true vendor invoice comes in against that to reverse those expense side transactions, okay? If you looked at your bottom line, you would only see pure sales because the accrued amount and the COGS amount cancel each other out. So at the bottom line, you just see pure sales during the period. Can I bill an IO only, or does the vendor invoice need to be posted? Okay, so IOs are IOs, vendor invoices are vendor invoices. Again, usually they tie to each other. If the vendor invoice hasn't, or if the IO has not been billed, then all the billing will be on the vendor invoice. Otherwise, it'll be a partial on the vendor invoice or nothing on the vendor invoice to bill. The vendor, and again, all it takes is approval to be able to bill things. More info on backside what GL hits as far as sales and cost. Okay, and again, that should be more of your purchasing. So again, you define the item that you're purchasing, and that item defines where it hits the general ledger for a sale. So again, I can go back into that. So, sorry, just moving some things out of the way. So when we come to media and, for example, a broadcast item, that broadcast item has an expense account, so that's where it hits the expense side. And when you put it on a client invoice, this is where it hits the sales side. So you define what account that it hits. Okay. Yeah, and again, as typical billing, yes, everything needs to be approved to make it available for billing. Okay. Okay. Insertion. So I was trying to, are there any plans to be able to have vendors upload? Okay. Is there any scan and match up existing vendor invoices? Okay. Is there an easy method to scan and match up existing vendor invoices? Once an invoice is entered, how easy it is to attach the image? Can it be done in bulk? Okay, so you're saying, I have this vendor invoice I got. I want to upload that to the vendor invoice that's in Workamajig as a screen capture. Or again, when I put in my vendor invoice, I think you saw, again, we pretty much provide a list of the orders that are out there outstanding for that vendor. Okay, so let me do this global search again. Here's my vendor invoice. Okay, and so the system recognizes it until it's approved. It says, hey, there's insertion orders out there. There's broadcast orders out there. Which one do I pick? Okay. As far as attaching that to a vendor invoice, there is a, sorry, just I have some stuff that's kind of in the way here for this. There's an attachments that I can click on, and if I scanned it, then I could upload it to it. Okay. But it's not printable anywhere. It's just attached there. We would think, again, this data should match what's there. So again, we're not going to show a picture of it anywhere. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. And as far as again, the sales and expense and how those things book into the accounts. I would recommend, if you have a lot more questions on that, just again, send in an email to support@workamajig.com so we can set up a training specifically for you so you can see that kind of how those things work. Okay. And I'll just leave it open for a couple more. Are there any questions that you have that I didn't answer and you want to type them back in again so I can answer them? And again, if I did miss anything, please, again, support@workamajig.com. Happy to answer those. Again, they'll come to your account manager, and if you want to put in, can you ask Dave? They'll send them to me, and I'll answer them directly as well. Okay. And again, if you want further training, again, this was just an overview. So if you have any needs for further training, just ask for it. We're happy to set that up for your team. Okay. All right. Well, I'm not seeing anything new come in. Thank you guys very much. I'll give it, going once, going twice type of thing. Okay. But if not, thank you guys very much for your time. Truly appreciate it. And enjoy the rest of your day. Appreciate it. Bye-bye now.